Today we're going to use Vanilla JS to validate and authenticate into a login form. Hey guys, welcome back to a new episode of DevJour. Today we're going to be building out a login authentication system, just a simplified version. Use Vanilla JS, HTML, and SASS. So in the previous tutorials, I've kind of showed you how to build out like a fully functional CRUD application using PHP. This one won't involve any PHP, but it may be something where in the future we could kind of add on to it and maybe add an API call that's built in PHP or something like that. But this tutorial is essentially going to be going over how to do login validation using Vanilla JavaScript without using jQuery or frameworks or any kind of plugins for jQuery. Just straight Vanilla JS, and how we can actually build it out using application sessions, stuff like that. So before I do get started, if you like this kind of tutorial or you're interested in other kind of tutorials that are PHP based or WordPress based or server based, I have a few of them. I think I have 70 something videos on my channel now where it kind of goes over a wide variety of topics. So if you're interested in that, definitely hit the subscribe, hit the bell notification so you can hear about new videos that I push out. Try to push them out once a week. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So first thing I'm going to do is just create the structure that I need. So I've already created our index.html page, and I'm also going to be building out the CSS. So I'm going to create a SASS folder, and then inside of this I'm going to create a, let's say, login.js. And let's also create a initialize.js. Actually, you know what? I'm going to take this login.js. I'm going to put it in a new folder, and this is going to be our JS folder. So let's go ahead and move that to there. Okay, so now we kind of have our folder structure set up the way that we want it to be. So let's go ahead and start working on building out the HTML so that whenever we get to the point where we need to do the JavaScript, it won't be too difficult. So I'm just going to add an HTML5, and let's title this, let's do login, and I'm going to reference the SASS that's going to be built here. So let me go ahead and create that file, and we're just going to say style.scss, and then I'm going to watch the SASS. So it's being generated here, so we have our CSS and our min.css. So we don't really need this right now, so I'm going to go ahead and get out of that, but I do want to add a reference to that style sheet. So we're going to do link rel equals style sheet, and let's do href equals css style.min.css. So right now there's nothing in it, so it's not going to do anything, so that's fine. Let's also add a script reference. So we're going to do script defer source, and this is going to be js login.js. Okay, so that should kind of get us started. Let me go ahead and push this to the live server just so we have something on there. Let's start adding our script. So for this, we're going to have a specific CSS style that's just for the login page. So we're going to just set this as the body class to be login, and inside of that we're going to create our own container. So again, this isn't using Bootstrap, but we will be able to control this in the SASS whenever we get to that part. Alright, so let's do h2, and we're going to do class equals text center. This is going to be a login screen. Okay, and then let's add a break tag. So I'm just going to be adding a form with a username, a password, and then a login button. So let me do that real quick. So we're going to do form action. I'm going to make this redirect on success to dashboard.html. And let's do login form as the class. There we go. And let me close this so it stops wrapping. Alright, so let's create div input group and input group. Then inside of this, I want to do label class label, and this is going to be for the username, and let's just pass a username. Then let's do input, and let's do class input, and it's going to be text. The ID, we're just going to do username as well. And then finally, let's put a span that is going to be our error message. Okay, now I'm going to take this and I'm going to copy it and paste it here. So for instead of username, this is now going to become password, and I'm just going to put this in a few different places that it needs. So password, and then the type of field is also going to be password. Alright, so, and let's change this to password. Alright, so I think that's all we need for the login. So now I'm just going to add in a break tag below that, and then we're going to do input type equals submit class, and we're just going to create a button class, and the value is going to be login. Actually, why am I doing input here? Button I forgot. Button class button, and let's see, type equals submit. Then we're just going to have this as login and close the button. Okay, so now we have our generic screen. So what I want to do is, inside of this login.js, I'm going to create a class that has some functions that we can call from the initialize.js. So let's do class login, and let's build our constructor for it. So we're going to do construct, so constructor, and then we're going to pass the form and the fields, so that way the script knows what it needs to run it against. So I'm gonna go ahead and open up the initialize.js just so we can actually, you know what, we're gonna add that in the bottom under here. So inside of the login, we want to create this variable for the form. So we're going to do const form equals document dot query selector, and I think we called it login form, and that has to be, or needs to be a class. Okay, so now we have this constant form. So if the form is if it is set, then we want to pass these two fields for it. So we're going to do const fields equals an array, and the first one is going to be username. So username and then password. So that's going to be our const field. So it's basically we're passing these two fields, or these two variables. So also, while I'm in here, let's go ahead and do const validator equals new login, and then we're going to pass form fields. Okay, so now this will hit this for us. Now we just need to make this do something. Okay, so let's go ahead and create some variables. So we're going to do this form equals form. That way we can pass it between the functions. This fields equals fields. And then I want to create a function here that whenever it is submitted, it runs this function. So let's do validate on submit. And then that's just going to be a function. So I need to take this function and we're going to call it whenever this script is called. So this validate on submit. Okay, so inside of here, let's go ahead and add a, let's do let self equals this, not left, let self equals this. And then this dot form, and then we're going to add an event listener. So add event listener, and it's going to be looking for the submit event, and then we're just going to use the shortcode for the function. Alright, so inside of this, let's go ahead and do prevent default just so it doesn't submit the form. So prevent default, and then I want to do a console.log just so we can see what we're getting from this form. So I want to do a console.log, and let's see, what did we name them again? Let's see, ID password. Actually, you know what? Instead of doing the console log this way and trying to pull it individually, what I'm going to do is we're going to do self, because we've already declared self. So self dot fields for each. So basically the fields that were sent over, we're going to loop through those into a for each statement, and then we're going to pull and make it do what we want it to do from inside of this for each statement. So we're going to say for each field, for each, so our what is it called? Our result is going to be a field from the fields array. Okay, sorry, I'm just thinking as I'm doing it. Kind of hard to do this in real time. Okay, so for each field, fields produce a field that we can interact with. Alright, so let's do const input equals document.query selector, and then we are going to pass that field to this. So we're going to do hashtag $field, and that should allow us to define this input for each one of these fields that we are passing here. So username and password, it should be get passed to hashtag username, hashtag password, which is essentially what I was going to do in the console log. Okay, so let's do input dot, alright, let's try input dot value, and I want to do a console dot log so we can see what that value is. So in this screen I'm going to do inspect, so open up the console, and if I put in admin password, click login, we have admin password. Okay, so our JavaScript is grabbing what we want it to based on this array that we're creating, so that's good. Alright, so now that we have that, we need to do some stuff with it. So the first part is, let's create another function. So underneath this validate on submit, we're going to create a function called validate fields, and then we're going to pass a field to it. And each one of these is going to be put through a basically whatever requirements we want to put on it. So in this case, we just want to make sure that they're not blank, so that way we can say that it is required. So let's go ahead and take this validate field here, and I want to, instead of my console log, I want to do if self dot validate fields, and then we're going to pass the input here, and if this is equal to false, we're going to create a number that increments, which is going to be our error. So if there's an error, then it's going to give us the ability to flag it. So we also need to define this up here. So we're going to do var error error equals 0. Okay, so now if it doesn't validate, we're going to say that it's going to increase this error, and then increasing that error is going to prevent us from displaying something. So let's go ahead and do like if error equals 0, and then let's just say console log success. So right now there is no validation that goes on, so it should technically validate just because it's not doing anything at all right now. But let's make it do something. So we have this here. So let's do if field dot value dot trim is not equal to blank. We want to run this. Now what is that? Yeah, that's equal to blank. Double equal. I'll think about this in a second. Let me write down what I want it to do. So if it is blank, we want it to display something. What do we want it to display? Let's do this dot set status, and I'm going to create this function to go along with it, and it's just going to pass a message. So we're going to do the field, what the message needs to be. So we're going to do $field, so it uses that field, the field input, and it's going to use the label that's associated with it. So we're going to do previous element sibling dot inner text, and this is going to say cannot be blank. That's going to be our error message, and then we're just going to notate it as an error. Let's go ahead and make this double quotes so we stay concise with it. And then we're just going to return false. Okay, so now let's create this set status function. So let's come down here and do set status, and we're going to pass the field first, and then the message, and then the status. Alright, so let's create a query selector constant variable. So we're going to do const error message equals field dot parent element dot query selector, and then in the beginning we put error message as the error message class. Okay, so now we have our error message defined. Scroll down a little bit, and let's say if we have a if let's do if status equals error, then we want it to show an error message. So we're going to do field dot parent element dot query selector again. Actually, you know what? I have this constant variable here. I'll have to rewrite that again. So let's do error message. So we got error message dot inner text is going to be equal to message, and then we're going to do field dot, we're going to add a class to it. So class list dot add, and it's going to be input error. So we are going to not only show an error message, but we're also going to show a where it's like the box is red around it, so you know which specific text box is showing an error. Okay. So, all right. I think that would be good. So let's test it. So if I do login right now, cannot read undefined, reading inner text, login 30. Let's see, what did I do here? So it cannot be blank, field dot previous element sibling, not sibling. Okay, now let's try it again. Okay, now that works. I just misspelled sibling. So if we also inspect these, we can see that now it has an input error, and then the error message is showing this information here. So what happens if we add something here, and then we go to hit? Okay, well we don't have any validation where it's a success, so it wouldn't do anything anyway. But we can see that it is adding what we wanted to add here. So let's add in some other stuff. So right now we're checking to see if it is blank. So let's also check to see if it's not blank. We are going to run something for the password. So if the field dot type equals password, so if it equals to a password, we want to make sure that password has X amount of variables. Let me get rid of this so you can see that better. Okay, so if it is a password, then we want to check to see if it has a certain amount of variables. So let's do if field.value.length is, let's say, less than 8. We want it to show an error message. So I'm going to copy this entire block, and we're just going to rewrite that error message. So this dot set status, pretty much everything stays the same over here, but what we need to put here is must be at least 8 characters. 8 characters. And this is an error, and it's going to return false. If it is over 8 characters, let's run an else statement, and we're going to do this dot set status, and then field, and then we're just going to pass a null message, but it's going to be labeled as success. All right, so let's scroll down so you can see that, and then we're going to return. Let's see, return true. And we also need to close this one off. So if it's not the password type, but it's it has a value in it, we want to go ahead and do else, and we're going to basically just return this same status because it is successful. Okay, so now let's test that out. So if we come over here and we do a login, so the password cannot be blank, so this one's no longer showing that error message. So if we do here, now it says password must be 8 characters. So if we do this, okay, I gotta make it count the actual characters. Alright, let's see what is going on here. So if it's password, if it's field type password, if it has less than 8 characters, then we set the status, return false. Otherwise, we set the status, field null success, that's correct. Set status, return true. Set status, return true. Alright, well let's try this. Let's come down here, and since we're passing a success status, let's add one here. So if status equals success, then we want it to, let's say if error message, then we're going to have error message dot, okay, so this should remove if there's like a leftover error message inside of it. And then we're also going to come over here and say field.class list.remove, and then we're going to remove this input error. Where did I put that at? Input error message class that we put in. We're going to remove that. Okay, so let's try this again. So if we come over here and we do this, click login. Now we get 4 characters, so that's 8 characters. All right, so now it removes itself. Okay, so now we have this. Let me just look through and see if there's anything else that we need to do. So it's going to show an error here if it's successful. If it's successful, let's go ahead and do this. We're going to do this.form.submit. And I guess I should have been looking at the console log to see if it was actually sending over this success message. But let's try this. So let's add something here. There's 4, 8. We hit login. It brings us to our dashboard. All right, so that's working. So now if we try to hit login, let's refresh. And we hit login. It won't let us do anything here because it's not letting us. Okay, well, that's an issue that I need to take a look at. All right, so let's look at the code. So for each error. Oh, okay. So what's happening is this error actually needs to be outside of the for each loop, because what it was doing is basically this one, if you put in the username, it was going to validate true, which would, as soon as the error equals 0, so starts off at 0, if it validates true, hits 0, exits out, comes down here. So what it was doing is, before it was able to exit out of the username being true, it was submitting the form because it didn't see any errors because it was inside of that loop. Now that it's outside of the loop, we should be able to see it actually work here. So if we hit login now, there we go. So now this can't be blank, must be at least 8 characters. Once you have 8 characters, then it submits it. Okay, all right, so that's good to know. Yeah, I just had it in the wrong place. I think for the login class, I think that's all we need to do there. So let's come over here and start styling this to make it look a little prettier. So let's go into our style.sass, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to speed run through this. So basically I'm going to create it how I want to create it. You'll be able to see it in the code that I have attached to the tutorial, but I'm not going to sit here and make you wait for me to create these styles the way that I want them to be created. So just watch as the magic of video editing happens. Okay, so through the magic of editing, the SASS is done, and basically we should be able to see all of our changes. Now it highlights it in red. Password cannot be blank, username cannot be blank. So if we change this, it goes away. Let's come over here, and I'm going to add a break tag in between these just to split them up a little bit. And if we do this and this, password must be at least 8 characters. There we go. Okay, so now we have our login screen done. Let's do some stuff with it. So whenever they go to log in, not only do we want to submit the form, but also want to potentially, this is where you would add in your login API information. So let's do login API here. Basically, once you get to this point and everything's validated out the way that you want it to be, then you can essentially just pass the username and password to your API script, get your tokens, whatever you need to do, and then if everything according to plan, you would do if whatever you need, and then submit the form, and then it passes that form to it. So whenever it does that, we also want to do local storage.setItem, and we're going to pass a auth variable of 1. And essentially what that's going to do is it's going to store a application variable. So let's get rid of that. So let me just fill this out here, and we hit login. Now we're authenticated. That way we can use this authentication on this page too. So if you're not authenticated, it won't let you see this page. It'll redirect you back to the login screen, or if you want to log out, you would click a button. It will remove this application variable here. So having said that, what you would do with your API is that you would take kind of the same approach. Maybe you would save first name or last name or username, email address. Don't save the password obviously, but save the username, save the user ID, whatever's coming back to you from that API, and then you would set it inside of these items however you want to set it so they can be used throughout the rest of your site. So speaking of the rest of our site, I'm going to now create a dashboard.html page. So we're going to do a new file. We're going to say dashboard.html, and I'm going to copy all of this over. We're going to remove this form, and we're going to also remove this body class here. And let's go ahead and change this. We're just going to say dashboard. So right now you're able to hit this page. What we want to actually do is control that a little bit better. So we have our login.js. I'm going to create another file, and this is going to be auth.js. This is going to be a very, very simple script. Basically it's going to say that if you're authenticated, great. If you're not, kick you out. So in order to hit that, I want to also be able to do something to this initialize. So in the dashboard, instead of doing login.js, we are going to do auth.js, because we don't need that login script anymore. So let's do auth.js, and then let's also just do our initialization script as well, because that initialization script is going to be what controls this. So let's go ahead and add some text in here. So let's do h1 class equals text center, and then welcome to the dashboard. And let's just go ahead and do p class equals text center. Then we're going to do href goes nowhere. The class is going to be logout, because this is going to be a logout link that we will again destroy this authentication or storage variable. Okay, so let's go over to our auth.js and write some simple script for it. So let's do class auth. Let's do our constructor. We don't need to pass anything to this constructor. So what we do need to do is create a validation script. So let's do const auth equals local storage dot get item, and then we named it auth. So now we have this constant variable that's getting brought in from our local storage. So let's do this validate auth, then we're just going to pass this. So we need to create a function called validate auth, and we need to pass in whether that is a 1 or it doesn't exist. So we're going to do if auth is not equal to 1, then we want to do window.location, so location.replace, and it's just going to basically redirect them back to the main screen, which is our login screen. Else we're going to do something here. Let's also go ahead and create the logout. So let's do logout, and we're going to do local storage. I'm just going to change this, and instead of being get item, it's going to be remove item. And then again, we want to do window location replace to make them go back to the main screen. So if I click on logout now, it's not going to do anything, but if I do go over here and remove this, and refresh the page, still not going to do anything because it's not actually being called yet. So inside of this initialize.js, this is where we're going to have that magic work. So we're going to do const auth equals new auth. And this does not need to be proper case. So const auth new auth, and you see it just redirected because now it's doing exactly what it needs to do. So if we try to access that dashboard, so slash dashboard.html, you see it just kind of redirects us back to the home screen because this variable doesn't exist. But if we come in here and do auth1 and then we try to access the dashboard now, it'll let us in. So now that we know that's working, let's come in here and create something for the logout. So we're going to do document.querySelector, and we called it logout, and then we're going to add an event listener to this. So add event listener, and we're going to listen for a click, and then we're going to pass e. I don't think we'll actually use it, but let's just pass it just in case. And then we're going to do auth.logout, and that should give us the ability to come over here and click this, and it logs us out. It removes that variable. Okay, so close to being done, not quite. Just, number one, we don't have anything that's validating against, so you can log in with whatever as long as it matches our criteria. But there is something that I have noticed in some of the testing that I've done for systems like this, is that even though you're not logged in, if you try to go to /dashboard, okay, well, it didn't show it there, but sometimes there's like a small glimpse of the page that you're trying to hit, which we don't want. Okay, well, it's not going to show it on this one just because I'm recording the video, but there is a way to fix it so that you don't have to worry about that in the future. So inside of our constructor, I'm going to create a document.querySelector, and I chose the right one that time. And on the body, we're going to do style.display equals none. And this will just make it where if that page does show up for a microsecond, it basically, there's nothing there. It won't be able to see anything. And it gets run before any of the other authentication stuff gets run, so it's kind of ensuring that once that page is hit, if they do see anything, it's just going to be a white flash while it's replacing it and removing it. So, having said that, we now have the body style turned off. So if we log in and it's successful, it's a blank page because we don't have it turned on. So what I want to do is, if it is authenticated, we come down here and we put this display to block. So now if it's authenticated, it shows you that actual screen, which is what we want it to do. So now if we log out, goes back to the page that we started with. If we enter in any information here, it logs us in. If we don't enter information, it shows us these error messages, and you can show different error messages based on the input. There's also a way that you can do these on blur so that while you're typing, it shows you an error message. However, in the logon script, because of the error validation, the way I have it set up right here, if we did it on blur, this would be kind of doing the same thing that for each did earlier, where it's going to show it as a true when it's not supposed to. So right now, that's why I have it only on validate on submit. But you can write a blur on there and then just not worry about this error message that's coming here, and just make it where it just shows these, and then have it actually run on the submit where it actually submits the form. So you can do all that kind of stuff, but I'm not going to get into that. So I think that's going to do it for this tutorial, but I think I want to expand on this a little bit more and maybe either build an API or use one of the APIs I've already built that has user authentication that we can utilize to be able to log in and out of this system based on an external API. that's PHP driven. So for now, I think that's going to do it. If you like this kind of tutorial, hit the thumbs up for me, hit the like for me, leave a comment if you want to see other things that are like this. But it's a fun project, and it kind of gives you a well-rounded solution to be able to do some validation and authentication and storage and stuff like that using Vanilla JS. So there's no Bootstrap, no jQuery, no kind of plugins or frameworks that you have to deal with. This is just pure CSS, pure JavaScript, and pure HTML. So again, I hope you liked it. That's it for now. So I guess I will talk to you later.